Hey, how are you? This is TSI Talks number 3, and I've got the Knights of Unity going on here, and hopefully they will not give me too many flesh wounds. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves to us? I guess we can start with Jack.
Yeah, so I'm Sir Jack. I'm a programmer of. I love programming gameplay. I don't like programming such as servers and backend and so on. And I have been programming Scythe for a few years. I would say 4 or 5 years. And my whole time was programming the gameplay in the project. That's all.
Okay, so thanks, Jack. I'm Maszrum, and I'm an art director in the Knights of Unity, sorry. And also I'm the director of the Deckbuilding tournament.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Sir Olek, and I was one of the lead designers throughout the second half of development of Deckbuilding, basically.
Jack, how did you get involved into development?
It was a long ago, but at the start I was in outsourced projects for 1.5 year, and then I get proposition to go to the Scythe. It was at the beginning we had only alpha state of Scythe, and I entered to the team. The team was not so big. I think a few people. So it was my beginning in the Scythe, and the beginning of my developing games was when I was in college. There was I would say TK Games. TK Games was like a team of people that would in the future make a games, and that was my start. At the start, I don't know what I would make in games. So I had a few models in 3D in Blender, a few graphics in Photoshop, and then was programming. And yeah, that was my thing, programming. And I start work in the Knights of Unity.
If I recall correctly, Jack, you are the longest working developer in Scythe, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. I guess I should explain to everybody that Scythe is a board game conversion. It's an excellent game, and if you've seen some of the stuff from a free-to-play game, 1914, and also what's the other one? The RTS game.
The Fertile Crescent?
No, the RTS game based on the Scythe universe.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Iron Harvest, I guess.
Iron Harvest, that's right.
Yeah.
So this is the series of fiction that I believe comes out of Poland, doesn't it?
Yeah. The fiction is based actually on the artwork of Jakub Różalski.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's a great artist from Poland, basically.
And Rosalski, I think, as he would be known in the US, right?
Yeah.
He basically created this, like, the universe where the mechs are like around the 1920, 1910 countrysides, landscapes, and people. The artwork is absolutely amazing.
Very evocative. I absolutely love the background in it. I've not read any of the books, but I guess I came into it with Scythe as the board game, and then later, saw Iron Harvest and the free-to-play 1914, I think is what it's called, that just came out pretty much recently.
Yeah, and I would say Iron Harvest is more like game based in this universum, but Scythe, our digital edition, is more like port of board game to the digital, to the mobile and PC.
Right on.
Yeah, it all started with the board game side, and we acquired a license, and was I guess lucky enough to be working on the digital version, and it became really popular on Steam.
Maszrum, what are you doing with the Knight, and what is kind of your background? How did you get into this mess? Being game design, not Knights of Unity.
Yeah, sure. My background is in artwork. I was initially doing art for free-to-play games, pre-mobile era like yourself. And then I grew tired of the free-to-play model, basically, because I often found that we have many of the team have awesome ideas, and we could not implement those ideas into the free-to-play games because you have to be forced to pay money, basically. So you cannot give players a good, I would say, or perfect game design, because you have to block them to force them to pay money. And yeah, it was tiring to me. So I decided to try to maybe start designing my own games, and I met with the founder of the Knights of Unity, and he really liked my design. It was actually a design for iCaptain, and they the Knights expanded their services to outsource the art also, and they needed someone with experience. So I ended up being an art director for the company, and while also developing iCaptain in the meantime. But then there was some contract stuff that didn't allow us to work on iCaptain anymore. Other developers had to jump onto other projects. It's funny because they actually have to jump onto Scythe to make some contract come true quickly, and iCaptain was on hold. And then the founder of the Knights came to me and told me, I remember you had some idea for a small game, card-based racing game or something like this. Maybe you could pitch it to us. Yeah, and we thought, okay, so maybe we can do something like this quickly, like a half a year project, and we'll go back to iCaptain. And here we are, 3 years later.
Yeah, anytime they tell you it's a half-year project, buckle in, it's going to be 5 years.
Yeah, now I don't know this, but back then I was still a naive person.
I'll put all the links to the various games we're going to talk about in the comments, but just really quickly, iCaptain looks like it's a turn-based strategy game, to me at least, and it's really interesting. I see some ship-to-ship combat. I see some sailing between ports. I see a great image of some ports, some inventory stuff on the Steam page. It looks really good.
Yeah, we were really close to making a deal with the Dalek. I guess it's far long gone now, so I can talk about it. Yeah, it was it was supposed to be a mashup of Final Fantasy Tactics with FTL, kind of, but with a really light tone and a lot of humor. So yeah, hopefully we can still go back to it someday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right now we have to deliver the fruit to its final release.
It gives me the vibe of the game Abandoned Ship, which I think
actually,
is more roguelike than what you're going for, but that's kind of where, when I looked at this, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, actually, I saw Abandoned Ship when we were already developing iCaptain, and I thought, oh, yeah, someone came up with a similar idea and executed it already. So,
well, isn't that crazy how sometimes development or developers, all of a sudden there'll be a glut of big games dealing with potions. That just happened recently. You had Potion Simulator, Potion this, Potion that.
Yeah, Potion Tycoon. There's quite a few of those came out in the recent year, I guess. Yeah,
so, a pirate tactics game, we can have 10 of them. I mean, that'd be fine, as long as they all do something different.
Yeah, Abandoned Ship is actually a real time, and iCaptain was supposed to be turn-based, so I guess they are maybe similar in one sentence, but when you get into it deep, then you can see a lot of differences. So yeah, I'm not worried.
And I guess it's Maszrum next, or do you guys reversed?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Is it Olek that hasn't spoken yet, or do I have you guys reversed?
I haven't spoken yet.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Go
No
ahead.
problem. So what's the question? How did I start with the knights?
Yeah. What are you doing for the knights? And how did you start?
I was doing death roads for almost all I'm currently working around a year and a half with the knights, and I started with death roads after the first PAX demo last year. I was moved to another project, client-based project. Unfortunately, that I can't really disclose the details. But it was in need of someone to take helm as a lead designer. But after that project ended, I was returned to DevRoads for the very last leg of development, and for last 4 months I was grinding DevRoads pretty hard. Actually, DevRoads is the reason I got the job, because I was working in another game design company and was looking for another job, and I saw an ad for the job posting for the Knights, but it said it requires portfolio, which at the moment I had no portfolio. That wasn't nothing I could show that wasn't under NDA at the moment. But I wrote anyway, and I was extremely lucky because I got the question, what's the game you would really want to make? And I answered a roguelike deck builder, as this is my favorite genre, as the biggest stan of Slay the Spire you can find on this side of the globe. And like one thing led to another, and I ended up in Death Roads and wasn't looking back since. It was a really wild and interesting ride, but the finish is just sweet. It just feels sweet, and it's not even the proper finish. It's like really good.
So for the listeners, Death Roads Tournament obviously is a roguelike deck builder that is the new hotness. We've been talking about it online, especially my group. Some of our contributors have been playing it in beta. I've been playing it for beta, and it's really tight. It's really good. It's car combat, and car combat is just amazing and excellent. Probably because I come from the board game world. I was doing card combat in the 80s with a little game by Steve Jackson called Car Wars that's still around. And
I wanted to ask you, that's the title. I remember doing research for Death Roads and I stumbled across some old Car Wars content, and I was like, this looks like our game, but it's pretty old. The mechanics are pretty old. You know,
they are, with rulers and little cutouts for turning angles and stuff.
Yeah, from what I heard, it's a pretty open system, right?
Yeah.
You can easily make your own additions and basically DLCs, you can call it.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. There's one with trucks. There's one with pedestrians that came out in the base rules, and then they turned it into an RPG. So there's I think the Auto Duel RPG. And Richard Garriott back in the 90s, my little, claim to fame working for Origin. I didn't work on this project because it was much older than me. It was Auto Duel, and it was an RPG action type game where you would go around to different places in the city and compete. And when you competed, it was a little action sequence. That was interesting too. Those are the two big strategy style car combat games, but also not Metal Gear Solid. Wow, this is the problem when you're 53, you forget the name of games.
Yeah, maybe you mean Twisted Metal?
Thank you. See, my brain is just, I'll remember anything, from the 80s, but anything later than that, I forget.
Yeah, Twisted Metal was one of the inspirations for Death Roads, but the idea from the start was to make it tactical turn-based rather than reflex dependent. So, yeah. We really didn't see any major titles that would combine those two, and we went for it.
No, I think it's a great choice. The theming is wonderful, and I really had a lot of fun with it. It's come a long way since I first saw it. I remember seeing the first screen that told you the various icons meant, and it was just one big screen with every icon in the game listed on it. And I was just oh no, this is not, this can't happen. But now it's really slick. It shows you just the card, and you zoom into the card, you see the icons that are specific to that card. Much better experience for the player.
Much better, yet still not completely optimal.
Yeah, we still have some work to do with it because our weapon cards use mostly the same template. There are a couple of devils inside it, so yeah, we have still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, this will be probably a recurring theme when we'll be talking about Death Roads. That stuff is pretty good. It's definitely better than it was throughout development, but it usually still needs that a little extra oomph. And this is mostly because Death Roads is a pretty cool, complex game, but it's complex for the players, but it's just amazingly complex for development. The game is surprisingly tough because there's so many interrelated things, so many minor things that influence other things and are rooted in other systems, and it all has to work really tightly together, especially on the battle scene.
We often come up with a great idea and then it dies instantly because we found a couple of edge cases where it couldn't be possibly implemented, and the idea dies on the road.
A couple or a couple hundred, like multi-slot trucks. RIP. Miss them terribly already.
Yeah, we really wanted to do trucks, that will occupy more than one space, and we waited so long to talk about it more, and then in a way it came up to we actually cannot do it at this point because too many other systems won't allow it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to do it earlier even because it took just too much time, but at one point when we finally had time and resources to talk and think about it, we got the response from developers that it basically requires to rewrite the game from its core, and just for one mechanic, unfortunately. Even as cool as having these big ass trucks, like the very Mad Max type experience, we don't have a guy that rocks on guitar on this big ass stage that's on 18 wheels or something, the classic Mad Max take, with the flame going out of the guitar. Like, we don't have this. It's not that epic with a single car.
I think those are called dwarf warriors, the guys with the guitar.
Exactly. You're Mad Max, I see.
You're Mad Max.
I'm a big post-apocalyptic fan. If it's about after the end of the world, I'm there.
So we probably have to mention that one of the sources of inspiration from Death Roads, and actually like the real source of the story, was, I think, Maszrum, your Hiroshima campaigns, am I right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did you play, CJ, did you play Hiroshima tabletop RPG?
Yep. Well, no, I didn't play the RPG. I played the board game for Hiroshima, and also for Hiroshima Convoy, not Convoy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you are familiar with the IP?
Yep.
I guess. I was actually a game master for a couple of years in Hiroshima tabletop, and some characters we used in Death Roads are actually characters from my campain.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I drew them just for fun, and we one day we came up with the idea maybe we should add drivers to Death Roads. So I took my old drawings and they ended up in the game.
Nice. Yeah, the artwork is very evocative, especially with the character design. But what I really, really like is the cards and the equipment and the way the cards look. I mean, granted, the layout of the cards might be able to be improved a little bit, but the way they generally look is really slick. How did you guys finalize what the card would pretty much look like? I mean, I guess you went through a bunch of iterations.
How did we finalize?
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. That's what I can tell. You know, we could make how many different cards would be Maszrum if you would make every type of layout we had in the game? Like 30?
Yeah,
20?
something like this. I guess we went over a bunch of them during the development, and we only the last tweaks we did was actually last week. Yeah.
Talk about coming in hot, right?
And it even may not be the last week, as you mentioned. The layout could use some more love, so maybe we are not done with it yet.
I think the game has such a distinct visual style, and you guys have a good Steam page with showing that off. You know, I'm excited about the game. I can't hide that. So I look forward to seeing where it's going. How long do you anticipate in early access? I know that's a really difficult question, especially when it just released in early access last week. But why not ask it, right?
Yeah, don't take my word for it or anything, but we are aiming for a 1-year roadmap plan to fully develop the game, but it will also depend on the feedback and stuff like that. Already we've seen some great suggestions from the community, and we are talking about changing the roadmap and add some other stuff we didn't plan on doing. So yeah, it's still in liquid state, I would say.
It's not feature complete at this point.
No, not content completed, not feature completed yet, but I guess we were focusing on the core, and the core is there. I think I don't suppose we would really change it at this point, but we still are planning to add a couple of features, a quite good amount of content, I feel. So there's still some nice news coming up.
How do you go about balancing the player progression versus enemy progression as you move through the roguelike map?
Maybe Olek, you can answer
I
that.
think I'll take this one. My good Maszrum. You know, balance is a little bit of science and quite a lot more of just getting the feeling right. Unfortunately, Death Roads is not very suitable for more standardized mathematical balance models, as there is just too much too much things at change at the moment. Too much things are kind of dependent on like the situation, the context, and so on. Like, it's not as calling like Slay the Spire, for example, a simple game to balance and bind somewhat mathematically, but in this game enemies have intents. They are kind of predictable. I mean, they are always going in similar cycles or even the same cycles, and you can basically predict the damage output of an enemy over his entire loop, or sometimes it just scales up. In Death Roads, on the other hand, we are using somewhat basic but still working working sometimes even very impressively AI that has to always take into account its position of the player's vehicle, position of other vehicles on the grid, the distance, the card ranges, like the singular behavior archetype, as they are called, for a single opponent, has around, I would say, 50 parameters to be turned on and off and manually have their values and weight assigned. So, and it all needs to be in relation to the vehicle loadout, which here are cards that are available for the AI controlled driver. As basically, if you would take the wheel of the AI controlled vehicle, it would work exactly the same with like really, really minor differences aside. So balancing the game is a really, really tough sell, tough nut to crack, and we are doing it mostly by the feeling of designers, and I think I have the most to say, as balance is somewhat of my speciality in game design.
Nice.
I just really like balancing, because I have a huge background in as a Magic the Gathering tournament player for a really, really long time, and also in like an enthusiast, not a player, but of competitive League of Legends, like really like esports and games with meta games. So like when you play the game as much as we do, and sometimes even anticipate the impact of some changes we are making, sometimes you just feel that the change is needed, and then you just test it and see if you were right. But we are also aware that no matter how hard we would test our balance proposal, so to say, for early access, it's absolutely meaningless compared to the amount of testing that will be made in even first few days of early access. We can right now look at the statistics and gain so much more in-depth data and things for us to crunch and try to get the most correct ideas for the future of balance of the game, and also of course basing on feedback of our players, because we are really lucky, as even the first few days shows us, that we are really looking to build a thriving, vibrant community that both enjoys the game and wants to enjoy it even more with all added features and work we are planning to do on the game. So I just find it amazing that I can jump into conversation about some topics. Today, like last night, I was replying on comments on the game suggestions thread, and I saw suggestions that we weren't even thinking of at the moment, and we really bounced back like 4 times the amount of ideas that are in the game at the moment, at least during development. I am still, I still can see something so fresh and interesting that wasn't really our consideration before. It just feels amazing. But I think right now when we finally have the data and feedback, we'll be probably looking into making the balancing even more structured, like actually a lot more structured than it is. And I think I will keep some secrets of my trade to myself.
Oh, of course. One of the folks that I became friends with over the last couple of years of doing this project with the Strategy Informer made a game called Vault of the Void, little roguelike deck builder. But one of the things that he did was he brought in some players that he found in the community that basically were good at breaking deck builders, breaking Magic the Gathering, finding out all those little. It's a black art, it seems, to be able to find out the exploits and the things that just are absolutely overpowered. And he brought those guys on to do all kinds of playtesting and balancing. Do you think that's something that you guys would want to see, seeing people in the community become heavier testers?
I think it could be a great idea. We didn't really talk about it yet, but now that you mentioned it, it sounds.
Oh, I think
it
we
sounds
actually
really
did.
good.
That was the concept behind our idea for like the just before the release playtesting. Like we're talking about getting this hit squad of best players and making them grind or something.
We were hoping to get some valuable feedback from the community, but we're not really thinking about hiring those people, before. Maybe we should look into it.
Well, even if it's not hiring, just giving them, some benefits in the community, Discord roles, title, or something on the credits and stuff like that. Because that's how a lot of people break into QA. Is they start out.
Guys, if you feel you are good at death roads, if you plow through the game, the interceptor has nothing on you, hit us up. we got to talk. But I'm not even joking. That would be awesome if someone could hit us up.
No, I think that's a good serious point. You know, even if you
Of course, because what you're saying, CJ, is this is basically the Slay the Spire story, because I as a huge enthusiast, and also it's like a kind of founder of my favorite and the genre I was working on. The creators of Slay the Spire were really big on the game. I think it was Android Netrunner. I think.
Mm-hmm.
They are, of course, also Magic players, Dominion players, of course, but they were, I think, big on tournament scene of the Netrunner, and they got guys from their community. And really early on the development of Slay the Spire, they got them on the Discord to just playtest, to get all the newest builds. Really, they were doing really frequent updates. Like, from what I remember, it was like sometimes even week, 2 weeks, just to tweak stuff up, find change some stuff a little bit. And this was actually the basis of their pretty large playtest group that later they got during the early access. So this is actually the classic success story of a roguelike deck builder.
Yeah.
My concern about this is that Slay the Spire is pretty good for such testing approach, because you are looking for the breaky builds, but not the ones that are unfun or completely broken, too easy to get, and so on. Because like in in the Slay the Spire, when you get the broken build, it feels really fun, because
Yes.
when it comes to single player and you broke the game, it just feels really great. Unfortunately, in Death Roads, it's a tad bit more complicated, because if you find an overpowered build, it also feels really, really great. But unfortunately, really overpowered builds, and for now we kind of toned down, and the balance of the game is definitely skewed towards being really, really hard. It's one of the hardest iterations we ever had, but it's because the game just really, really snaps in half when it's too tuned to be really, really overpowered. The game presents almost no challenge sometimes, and it's really, really not easy to balance it correctly when it comes to that. We are always looking for as many ways as we can to make it so the worse, in quotation marks, builds are viable, but also the best builds aren't completely dominating, because we still have to kind of balance for these better builds for the game to be challenging. This is one of the hardest challenges in design, but I can assure you there are still broken builds in Death Roads. There will be many more to come, and there are also some pretty nasty boss cheeses if you are willing to look for them.
Yeah, we often found that the most optimal gameplay or build isn't necessarily the most fun. You can you could escape easily, or you could keep your distance very easily before, and it was the best way to win, but maybe not the best idea for the player fantasy.
Yeah, for example, there was a time in development, it was actually for a pretty long time, when the escapes weren't limited. You basically had infinite escapes.
I remember that in one of the builds.
Yeah, that was a really, really early build. And the idea was that you still receive the component reward, but you do not receive scrap reward. And the idea was that it kind of should balance it out. But this was actually one of my first insights into the project, is that we need to do something about escapes, because escaping all the time until you reach the final battle was an optimal strategy, because you don't lose any condition, you still got the proper components, you don't have money to scrap to heal and to buy new stuff, but you don't need it because you don't need to heal, because you are almost at full HP, full condition all the time. And then you find the one battle you have to fight, which is the final boss, and your run is done,
Mhm.
which is not the best experience for sure. because one of the first things any designer learns is that you have to guard players from themselves. Because if you allow player to do something that's not fun but is effective and let's win or do another thing that's positive in the game more effortlessly and more effectively, it will always be done.
This is something that I come across in my discussions on strategy gaming, and we'll get into it in a little bit when we talk about Scythe, is that I like really difficult games. I want to be challenged by the game. And I don't play a lot of multiplayer, so I'm looking for good artificial intelligence in games. And that's certainly a challenge in the market at the moment, although there are some strides. We had mentioned Dominion a minute ago, and Dominion uses a neural net trained AI that is very strong. It's not gonna kill a world-class player, of course, but it will give you a run for your money. And people don't generally want really hard games when it comes to like a Civilization or 4X. They want to play out a power fantasy where they're controlling the universe, they're in charge, they've got the world at their fingers. People don't want to generally play a 40-hour game and lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same in Death Rows. Basically, we have had a lot of feedback that is aiming towards decreasing the difficulty. But we also know that many people are basically like you. They want to be challenged, and we have to strike that balance to make happy the most amount of people that we can. And maybe we should think about making an adjustable difficulty, but yeah, this is something ahead of us still.
Yeah. But
Jack, you want to say something?
Yeah, I can add from the Scythe that in our game, playing with AI, it's like when you start playing Scythe, you play with AI, but then most of the players playing in multiplayer. So playing with AI is in the hot seat. It's like tutorial, but not only tutorial, but playing with AI, and then you play with other players. Our community itself creates tournaments in digital version. So when we published the game, a lot of feedback was from the tournaments. We can adjust the balance of the game. And I like to say that when you publish the game, at this moment starts the real development of the game. Because during the development in company, you have dozens of QA specialists, but when you publish the game, you have a lot of players that give you feedback, and then the development starts.
Yeah, there's also like one more thing about this, what you said, Jack. I was like also pretty big on roguelikes, and I think like my favorite game of all time is Hades. And I was watching the no clip material on. I only watched I think half of the first episode, like how Hades was made. They have like this couple hours long, like pretty elaborate material creation of Hades. But one sentence that was said there like really resonates with me, because someone I think was I unfortunately don't remember the name, the gentleman that was I think the designer and one of the leads of the studio. He said that what really sucks is that you develop the game for a couple of years, but you actually understand the game at like the last 2 months of development, when most of the things are put together, the game is kind of feature complete, and you then start to understand your game. And it's really frustrating because you were developing the game for 3 years, designing it, with the future development in plan, but the full understanding of the intricacies of your game, of its systems, of where the fun lies in the game, starts revealing itself only at the end of the project. And with Death Rows, obviously we kind of had the same thing, because like when we have everything together, We see what is lacking, what should be improved on, what can work better with something. We were at least lucky that the version from a year ago was really similar, but also very different, because it had a lot of things like that. If you look, at the game pretty briefly, it kind of looks the same, but underneath it, there actually a lot of things was improved and changed. But returning to like the previous topic of discussion, I just wanted to say that we actually had this discussion like really, really close to the release of early access, that I have made a commit with final balance proposal, so to say, like all the values, that how I did put them, and I consciously will have turned the dial closer to the tough part, because even though we were receiving feedback that the game is in a good space with difficulty, I and one of the QA testers, who is also a really, really hardcore player, we were convinced that the game is too easy, and we knew that the hardcore players will feel the same. So we had a decision to make, because we could either turn the dial back down to make the game easier, or keep it that way. And we had a lot of back and forth discussions, and we finally settled on keeping it as it is, which admittedly is a little bit too harsh, and I think we need to address it in definitely the first update, maybe some quick tweak to some things that are not very invasive on other systems, like healing costs or damage on some opponents, like maybe plus 10 condition on all cars. There are really, really 100 things that can change their value.
Oh,
Yeah,
certainly.
don't get us wrong. We don't want to make the game easy necessarily, but maybe just a couple of little tweaks that won't be so frustrating on the players that put 20 hours and more and didn't get to see the final boss yet.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
we see that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. You, Olek, come on.
What?
Okay, you can end the sentence.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to finish that. I'm really happy with the decision we made, because we could we could make it easier, so that the players that right now are maybe getting frustrated with the game and saying it's too hard, it's not fun for me, they would just after 10 runs they could probably finish it, and I think they would forget about the game, because it was so fine, there are some cars shooting and I managed to beat it, let's go to another game. But the hardcore players would beat the boss 5 times in 7 runs and also would lose interest in the game, because it's way too easy for them. And we had builds like that I could literally close my eyes, click on cards, and nothing bad could really happen. But with the current state of affairs, maybe we will lose some of the player base to the pretty rough difficulty curve of our game. But many players, I think, will be engaged with the challenge it presents, and especially because we managed to pull off one of our pillars of designing the game, is that the game, you should be able to learn the game. The more you play, the more you understand it, the more you are seeing these tiny edges that you can get to not lose 5 condition here, to deal 2 more damage here, and so on and so on. And over the course of the entire run, it really adds up. Because I know the game is rough, I know the game is challenging, but it is challenging in the final encounter. The final encounter is really tough. And the encounter before that also can be really tough. But regular enemies with understanding of the game, normal RNG, and trying your best, I think it's perfectly manageable. And I have proven it a couple of times, reaching the final boss with pretty high rendition.
One of the things that I've discussed in our roundtables around game design for roguelike deck builders, which the running joke when I first started this project was that I shouldn't be the strategy informer, I should be the roguelike deck builder informer, because I was playing so many of them and reviewing so many of them, because they're nice, and sometimes you don't want to sit down for a 2 or 3 hour experience. You want to get a 45-minute game out, and you don't want to think too much, and roguelikes are great for that. how do you go around balancing or designing for a game that is meant to be played potentially for hundreds and hundreds of hours? Now, granted, not every roguelike deck builder is going to have that staying potential as Monster Train or Slay, but there has to be some thought going into it so it's not a one and done experience. Oh, I beat the game once, I can put it away.
Yeah, we definitely want to give the player some customizable options so he can find good decks combinations of the driver and car and gadgets and stuff like that for himself. But I can say that we are not yet happy with the unique characteristics of each car, but we are working on that. With a couple of more card mechanics, we should be able to basically draw more character from each of the car. And then the nature of randomness in roguelikes is adding on top of it, I think, a lot of replayability, because you have to make good decisions from what you are presented with by Aaron Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the clue to success. And when you are playing more of the game, you are getting to know the different parts, components, cards, and mechanics. And this allow you to make better judgment and better decisions along the way. So hopefully, the game would be fun enough for the players to test out different builds and different combinations.
Yeah. I have to 100% agree that adaptability is one of the key features of this longevity of roguelike deck builders, because when you start, you have to adapt to the usually not that well-known systems, pretty usually steep difficulty and so on. And the end game of most roguelike deck builders, which is like you reach this highest level of difficulty, let's say like Ascension 20 Slay the Spire, for example, and so on. And then everything else you knew about the game has to be used, and also we still have to adapt because the context and conditions are everything. Like when you for example watch this guy on YouTube called Jorbs or Yorbs, I have no idea how to read it, who I think is one of the, if not the best Slay the Spire player in the world. The way he approaches the Ascension 20 runs with all these complex, data sheets in Excel that list all the, options in some event, the chances of getting this relic and so on, it's all the tiny edge you can get. But for players to be even interested in reaching this phase, you need to have a really, really strong core system and quite a lot of content. Because as I agree that the adaptability and usually some, some minor, excitements, like for example daily runs or stuff like that are cool. I think the end game for most roguelikes, not even the deck builders, is when you are out of stuff to test. Like this is when I reached my sort of brick wall with Hades, when I tested every single build I was interested in, and that wasn't like basically the same build with any other pool. And kind of the same thing was with Slay the Spire. I played hundreds of hours of Slay the Spire, but at some point I basically played every deck that's kind of imaginable in the game and that I was interested in. I managed to pull off, the all-in-one focus, hard kill. My personal favorite, of course, is as I'm a man of culture, is Dead Branch Corruption, which is absolutely the biggest blast you can have playing Slay the Spire. Strongly recommend, if you at any point play Ironclad and get Dead Branch, just throw everything and get all the corruption cards and try to play this deck. It's so fun. So fun, I promise you guys. Unfortunately, it's not that simple when it comes to our lovely Death Roads, as it never is with Death Roads. Thank you, Maszrum, for creating such an amazing, simple game to develop. Such a pleasure.
Father of the game.
6 months. 6 months. Just 6 months.
Cool. Quick job, and we'll be up.
In out, the 20 minutes adventures, in and out. But when we started working on the project, I was like so big on Slay the Spire, and I was like, guys, we should do this because Slay the Spire does it. Because Slay the Spire this is how they do it in Slay the Spire. And after a while and some back and forth about like different mechanics, we met more privately with Maszrum with some beers at the evening, and we just talked about the project. And I had this list of all the things that are strange in this game. And when I listed it, I realized that this game basically takes so many rules of games of roguelike deck builder genre, of basically roguelike genre and turn-based battle games, and just throws it out the window. And I'm telling Maszrum, like, dude, you know that it may not be the best idea to break so many rules. Like, usually it's better, to just break one or maybe two at best rules, keep the other systems basically intact, and see where this idea will lead us. And Maszrum told me that he's not interested in that. He wants to make this game really unique. He wants to make it his way, with his ideas. You are saying it's not the best idea. Yeah, maybe, but it's at least interesting. Let's try it out.
Yeah, it was like we are not doing Slay the Spire only with
Yeah.
cards, but we are doing Deathroots,
Yeah. I remember this was one of the most important nights for me of the project, because you told me all this stuff, how you see and approach this game, and it kind of clicked for me. And since then, I think the design process went much more smoothly. But the returning to your original question, CJ, the issue with Death Roads is at the moment we are really focused on ironing out the core system, because the core system, as I have mentioned, may not seem as complex at the first sight of the player. Underneath it, it's really it's a monster. But because of that, if for example you compare the versions that was 1 year ago and currently, there isn't that much changes when it comes to content. There are like more events, there are a couple new cards, a couple new components, some new gadgets, new drivers, like a little bit more of everything. But the basic mechanics of the cards, the ideas behind the cards are kind of the same, because we were really focused on getting this content to shine the brightest in its current form, because we know this is the Death Roads 101. This is the playground. This is the starting point. And if we can make this work, we really, the sky is the limit with all the cool mechanics, improvements, new systems that we have either in our roadmap pipeline or somewhere even in like high concept stage or something. But we were aware that for now the content is it doesn't allow for a lot of this experimentation that's so much fun in the roguelikes, because we just do not have enough content for proper experimentation. But just let us cook for a couple of months, and we will have something pretty amazing.
Two things came out of that. One, I thought to myself, the world does not need another Slay the Spire. Roguelites are a saturated market. So you have to do something at this point to set yourself apart. Because why play your game when I could just play Slay, which we know is solid, which we know is expansive, which we know is going to give you a good experience. So someone who just comes out with a Slay the Spire clone that doesn't have, the years of backing that Slay did, is probably not going to do very well.
Yeah, the issue is that Slay the Spire has such a solid, amazing design that it's really hard to improve upon. If you compare the other games in the genre that made it big, they have changed some things, but the core structure is kind of intact. Like Monster Train has all this, putting your units and making them fight, in these rows and so on. But apart from that, it's basically Slay the Spire, but with, two paths instead of like some cross ones.
Monster Train could be, in my opinion, actually one of the most unique of the bunch. But yeah, I get your point.
Monster Train is my favorite of them.
Yeah, many people love Monster. I'm sometimes the game has aesthetic that I just can't get over, and Monster Train, unfortunately, is one of these games. Even though I have amazing respect for the developers and content creators and guys that created content for the game. I mean, not content creators that make videos on the game, because the mixing of these different clans and the options of customizing your run are just very, very impressive in Monster Train. But returning to like this little discussion on deck builders, like you take for example Griftlands, really good game in its own right, but the innovation in Griftlands is that you have two decks that work a little bit different, and that moving on the map is more exciting because you have some plot and sometimes stuff can happen that you do not expect, and it also looks like really great.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you check like many other like positions in the genre, like I don't know, like for example, Rogue Book, for example, it's an okay game. I had fun playing Rogue Book, but after playing it for like a day or two, I just put it out and wasn't really that interested in coming back to it, because it was Slay the Spire with the mechanic of two characters of three being in front of each other.
Yep.
Just a neat mechanic, don't get me wrong. And they also tried to improve upon the moving on the map, which is, as we also know from our development, an issue for like the game. So actually, Maszrum absolutely struck gold with his idea to not go for Slay the Spire, to just, take some inspiration, some of this basic structure that's so solid, and actually at one point therefore was in desperate need of an overarching solid structure to just make some space for the really cool game that was hiding there. But I think the sort of innovation on the genre is one of our strongest points, our strongest features as a product, as a title, because you can't deny the originality that's in there. That's you can like the game, you can not like the game, you can find it hard, you can find it entertaining or not, but I never ever heard that I've seen this game before.
Yeah,
That's
we of course took some general ideas from Slay the Spire, like maybe our gadgets are essentially relics from Slay the Spire. Our map structure is very similar, but the main thing, which is the core mechanics of the battle, is entirely different. So I'm not worrying about comparing us to Slay the Spire, or even comparisons are fine, but we wanted to avoid stuff like another clone of Slay the Spire, I think we did that.
Yeah, I think another really, really big difference is how the deck building aspect works, because the thing that we have these components like drastically change how you approach the balance, the drops of components and cards. I think this is the end of the discussion to have it
it's
right now.
It's not necessarily the most innovative idea. It was done in, for example, a Card Hunter, a game which we are supporting right now as the Knights of Unity. It was done in Deep Sky the Relicts. I don't know if you are familiar with this game, but it's quite fun.
Chronicles of Erannoth as well.
Oh, this one I didn't play.
It's probably the best roguelike you've never heard of. It is really, really fun in the sense that you build an RPG style character and you get various things like you're a hunter, you're an elf, you're a sorcerer, and those give you cards. So you get the hunter deck, which is 4 or 5 or 6 cards, and you get the elf deck, and they merge into one deck. And you play from that. It's really, really an interesting design that takes Slay and it spins it on its head. But the biggest problem is the production value is one guy, so it never really shined as much as some of the others. Even though it's really unique, I do definitely suggest checking it out. I'll send you guys a link to it.
Yeah, please do. I have to check it out because I don't really care about the production value. If there is a good game design behind it. Of course, good production value are always nice, but game design is most crucial for me, I guess.
That sounds so funny when you say it, dude. We have one of the best produced games in the genre, which you were an art director for. No. You sound like me, because I always on the meeting say, for me this could be a data sheet in Excel. I don't really care. I care about the numbers, values, and how it ends up.
But on the other hand, I'm also an artist, so I try to match the both worlds in this game.
Yeah. But I have to completely agree with you, Jay, that the market for roguelike deck builders really feels oversaturated, and it has felt for like 1-2 years or something. Like so many games have almost the same feel, like some slight tweaks on the mechanics. It kind of like seems that the business decision to make them was made during the Slay the Spire boom, and right now we are just getting it. And like I really do not want to trash other developers. I think you guys are awesome and you are doing a great job and so on. But it's just really hard when the predecessor of the genre is so good at what it does as Slay the Spire is, because I actually was thinking about this one day, that I do not know that many genres that are as absolutely dominated by a single title that absolutely dictates how everything else in the genre is done. I think maybe MMOs and World of Warcraft, maybe StarCraft in RTSs, and I really have no idea what the other example can be.
Vampire
Battle
Survivors,
Royale.
maybe.
Yeah, Vampire
Yeah,
Survivor.
yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to like but Vampire Survivors found Vampire Survivor-esque.
Yeah.
So
You know, there are definitely some core games that define a genre that, the genre may have not been there beforehand. I mean, with roguelike deck builders, I mean, Slay was obviously, the first. Well, no, there was another one, the one that was drawn, Dream Quest.
Dream Quest. Yeah.
That was the first one, and
you certainly know your games, kind sir. There are not that many people who are aware of Dream Quest. I actually spent an entire night once trying to beat Dream Quest, and I have to be sad. I'm sad to inform that I haven't managed.
But in the board game world,
Me too.
we had Dominion, we had Ascension. There were so many different market style deck builders and more of the traditional gain a card style deck builders. That was saturated as well, but no one could really beat Dominion.
For a couple of times, I hope you won't kick me out of the show for saying this, but I haven't played the Dominion for a really long time, and I have recently played it, from just to check on the classic, and I think the game does not hold up that great. I played one of the more basic versions, so maybe with better cards it gets more interesting. But I'm a really big stan of Star Realms.
Star Realms is good.
I love me some Star Realms. Star Realms also were designed by 2 Magic the Gathering Hall of Famers, so they got a special nod in my book, and I think they cut all the unnecessary meat from Dominion and just made one of the best 1v1 card games I ever played. I think the game is actually amazing. It's great straight out of the box, great after 100 plays, as I have with my girl.
So the only thing I have a problem with Star Realms on, and this is also evident in their second game, the Hero Realms.
Hero Realms or
Hero,
something, yeah.
Is that aggressive play is really the best style of play. Given the choice between, at least in the card set that's on the digital, which I think matches the board game. Given the choice, go ahead.
This is the basic set, because there's it depends how you want to play Realms, because you can either play it by the sets. So there are I think currently 3 or 4 base sets, and there are some expansions. But I prefer to play it so I get all my cards and mix them together. But I still have this one of the newest it's called, I think, Frontiers, and I have received it only recently, as I want to have all my Star Wars collection in Polish, so I always wait for the Polish edition. And we still keep it in the box separate, because it's a really different experience from other sets, because it's way more focused on buying, on big ships. The bases are not as strong as they are in many other iterations. And also the issue is that the first set has some highly unbalanced cards. if I would say get me top 5 cards in Star Realms, I think 4 or even all 5 would be from the first set. But I think the more you play Star Realms, and Star Realms is one of the games that's amazingly dependent on the quality of player you are playing with.
Oh yeah.
The better your opponent is at Star Realms, the game gets so much more depth and interesting strategy, because to win against a good player, you have to react to what he or she is doing. So, for example, if someone buys an early base, you have to buy 2, preferably maybe even 3 cards that can destroy the base, because if the base stays too long in play, you just get overwhelmed with the advantage. And all, like, if someone goes for the early aggressive cards, you try to go for some healing cards, or maybe some of these outposts that protect your life total. And I think this aspect of reacting to what the opponent is getting, and also the thrill that sometimes you can just spike the correct card, or you get some, for example, if I don't know, 4 buying, and you buy some random 3 cost card, and then it drops, the best 5 in the game, opponent shows you the 5 1 guys to buy, and you are in
You're
big
hosed.
trouble.
I think you have a good point there, and the reactionary play and Dominion is pretty much, it's kind of solitaire. You don't really care what the other player is doing. Once you come up with your strategy, you're going for it. You're trying to buy as many colonies as you can. Well, or estates, and not estates. I can't remember, province. Thank you. And other than the fact that they added some take that cards later on in some of the expansions, it's really one player. Whereas Star Realms, Ascension, there's definitely more of a reactionary style play, and I get that. I haven't played humans in Star Realms, so maybe that's my problem. Where I see that an aggressive play will 100% beat the AI, which is not a bad AI.
I recommend it. No, I played digital for I had a demo. I did not have, I think, the full release, but I played it for some time, and AI was okay. But the issue is that there is the gap between AI that's functional for card games and the AI that's challenging for card games is that's a pretty huge gap. And actually, this can somewhat return us to the topic of death roads, because when we see the improvement that we made with tweaking all these behavior archetypes recently in AI, this basically made that the game is completely different than it used to.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the AI was not making correct decisions, then it turned out that some of its features are slightly bugged and are not working as they should be, and it's very, very usually you can blame the QA tester, but these were things that QA testers had no right knowing about or understanding, because it's
it should be black box to them. It should be.
Yeah. But it shouldn't be a black box, but still, it's, even if you look and say that something is not optimal, there are not that many people who understand why. I can understand it because I set these things up, the other lead designer. I don't think Maszrum could say that something is wrong, but I don't think he would be able to tweak it from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes players came up with strange tactics, and it follows that what opponent will allow you to do in Star Realms and in other games like that.
Yeah.
Take a look at the Temple Gates series of games, Race and Roll for the Galaxy, Dominion, Ascension. They have been using the neural net AI that I mentioned before. It was developed by a guy named Keldon Jones, who did a fan project for Race and Roll, Race for the Galaxy, that was online, and eventually he got pulled in to do the actual digital real version of it. And it's a very strong AI based on GT Gammon as the network behind it. They train it via machine language for a couple of thousand games, and it learns the best strategies and what wins and what doesn't, and then it presents it to the player. And I think that's a great thing that we need to start looking at. Hold on, my Alexa went off. I'll cut that. So it's a great thing that needs to be looked at from a strategy game point, especially when we're dealing with the more compact strategy gaming of a board game or a card game. I don't know if it's something that would benefit Deathbrook.
You know, if the neural link network could understand our game and, you know, slide into AI, I would love to see that. We, you know, where we didn't actually have resources and development time to change the basics of the AI.
We were thinking
always-
about it though at the early stages of the development. We thought that neural networks would be the best fit for our AI, but it would also be costly.
Very costly. But would it really add anything if, say, you know, the big bad at the end of the game knew how best to beat the player or what cards were stronger than the others?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You just have to create an illusion for the player that the AI knows what it is doing, basically. In my
Yes,
opinion, of course.
yes, but also no, because neural network controlled AI could, I think this is a reasonable claim to state, it would be better at predicting situation in future terms, which our current AI is not that best.
Yeah, but
I-
if it would be better for the player, I'm not sure. You know,
Nah,
there
I
was a
wouldn't say-
reoccurring argument from the beginning of the development of Death Roads that we should show the enemy's intention, or we should simplify the behavior of enemies so they would do the same things all over and over for the player to be able to predict them better. And we struck a balance somewhere in between that, and I'm not sure if the AI would be smarter, it won't necessarily would make the game more fun.
Yeah. Again, you struck gold, Maszrum, with, you know, with the claim to leave it as it is and try to find the balance here, because we can clearly see even from the current iteration that better AI that makes a lot more correct moves than it used to is not that necessarily bigger fun. It's definitely bigger challenge, but is it bigger fun to constantly take damage because the AI always understands how to get you? I wouldn't say so. I
Our
would say
community is saying otherwise.
that it is.
Yeah, that it's not. They think I'm sure not all of them, but some of them thinks that the AI is always prepared for the best play they can do to make your life hell.
Yeah, but this is the only way it can work currently. So it's really
That's interesting. You mentioned earlier that they said it was too hard, but now they wanted to make their players don't know what they want.
Yeah,
They don't know what they want, but the second thing is at the start when we published Scythe, players say that AI is too hard. But after a few months and years, players say that AI is too easy because your community learns your game, and when you don't change your AI, they will learn your game, and the game will be easy for them.
yeah. This
So
is
it
also kind of the
change
case
with
with
time.
Death Roads,
Yeah.
because
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think the thing we want to find the balance is to make the game challenging enough so the player wants to get better to beat the game, but to not make it so hard that it feels frustrating to just have to find these small edges to just, you know, get it over with. I think that we are somewhere on the correct track, but not there yet. But it's also because, you know, of the thing I mentioned before, you know, we managed to pull the game together, and since 2 months we understand it, and the improvement the AI was introduced to since 2 months is, you know, we are talking, you know, it's a different league completely.
It will only be better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say that, you know, the understanding of AI currently is at, you know, 50-60% of its capabilities, and we are going deeper every day.
Nice.
And it's really, really exciting.
let's bounce to Scythe for a little bit, since we had a kind of an interesting segue to go into that.
Yeah, Maszrum, weren't you?
Yeah, actually, I will have to run because I have a really small daughter to take care of. So
Okay.
it was really nice chatting with you guys. I will leave you three to talk some more, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was great meeting you and talking to you.
Get some words to the fans of Death Roads, man. It's your
Yeah.
baby after 3 years. Let them know to let it rip on the road.
Yeah, thank you. I'll do that. Cheers. Take care.
Take care. So Scythe is a board game design. Came out, I think, in 2016. It ranks very highly in Board Game Geek, which is the authority on board games, and the community is very, very tough. So getting an 8.2 is an amazing feat on Board Game Geek. Scythe is the 16th overall ranked board game and 17th in the strategy category. And it had a digital version a couple of years ago, and I believe it was done by a different company. How did you guys get Scythe? Knights of Unity, that is.
Yeah, I started to develop a site a year. It was a year project when I start, so I don't know everything. But I remember that our company get contact to Jakub Różalski and to the Jamie Stegmaier,
Mm-hmm.
the people who made the board game, and then we get license for the IP. And at the beginning we were close to original makers of board game, and yeah, so it starts. But I would say our situation was easier and much harder than Death Roads, because at the beginning the design itself was already done. Scythe was already a long existing game, but on the other hand, it was a bit more difficult because board game players already had some expectations, habits about how the game should look like and how they want to play with in digital version.
So it was originally put out by Asmodee. Did the Knights of Unity take over from them, or were you guys the original developer?
No, it was not take over from the Asmodee. It was a close partnership with Asmodee and with Jamie Stegmaier and Jakub Różalski. So
Gotcha.
three-side team to make board game to the digital version.
Is Asmodee still involved in the project, or I mean, they're now owned by, what is it, Ember?
Yeah,
Ember
Asmodee was
Group.
publisher, but now, as we can see on the shops, Steam and so on, the Knights of Unity is the publisher. So we take over the whole digital edition game from the Asmodee.
So what, I understand, what the concepts and the mechanisms that Scythe is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Scythe does? What type of game is it? Is it a worker placement? Is it a area control? That type of discussion.
Yeah, Scythe is a worker placement and area control, because when you play Scythe you have hexes, you have the wood, iron, and so on. So you have resources to take over in the game. In Scythe you have mechs and you can fight with other players, but I would say fight is not a big deal in this game. It's much more about the management of the workers, resources, and the points.
Now there are a bunch of expansions for Scythe that are for the board games, but we haven't seen any expansion for the digital. Is that in plan?
Yeah.
I guess for like the Rise of Fenris. Sorry.
Rise of Fenris, modular game board, and Wind Gambit. For now, we don't have it on the digital. For now, we have only Invaders from Afar on the digital all versions. And now we are working. We have a roadmap for all the rest of the mentioned DLC. But yeah, it will take time to develop that and publish DLCs for our players.
When do you think we'll start seeing, DLC content?
For now, it's hard to say the date or for the first DLC, but we are working on that, and as much as soon we can give to the players the DLC, we'll do it.
So Scythe isn't dead.
No, for sure. It's not that on our side because in last year we had a lot of patches to this game. We are working on the DLCs, and it's not that on the community side because we see a lot of tournaments. We get feedback, so I would say a lot of percent work in the patches is get feedback from the players and implement this in the game. I know this because for like 1 year I respond to the players on the Steam forum and Google Play forum.
Nice. What? I'm trying to, I'm trying to get like the backstory of Scythe going on, and do a high level of what Scythe is. But Invaders from Afar is available, which is the first expansion that came out, I believe, very closely to the actual release, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was like, I don't remember exactly, but it was 1 year or 1.5, and then we put the Invaders from Afar to the shops.
And what that did, if I remember right, it increased the player count and it added 2 different clans.
Yeah, it was 2 fractions, and the map was fully available to play because the map at the start have 7 slots. Without the Invaders from Afar, you can play only on the 5 slot. So it add the factions, but it add the 2 players in 1 game. Without the Invaders from Afar, the maximum player in 1 game is 5 players. But with the DLC, you can play in 1 game with 6 other players.
And I guess so the Wind Gambit would be the one that you're working on now? Or are you kind of bouncing between the other expansions?
Yeah, for now, we had on the roadmap, I can check this because I don't remember, sorry, but we got this on the Facebook site on the...
Oh, the roadmap's on Facebook?
Yeah.
You guys should put it on Steam.
Steam, I would say.
I'm looking for the roadmap now, but I'll just make sure to link it in the comments below.
I don't only remember which one is first in our roadmap, but the first is the Wind Gambit, yes. So it's the Wind Gambit, modular board, and then Rise on Fenris.
Board game design, at least from converting it to a digital, is a lot different than first of all, you've got the game design already done. You don't have to worry about that. You've got the mechanics done. So it's mostly implementation of said mechanics, implementation of the rule set, and then of course, the AI and the networking code. What has been the biggest challenge in the development of Scythe Digital?
Despite the server and the AI, you must to get all. I would say the hardest part was UX in our game.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, we have a lot of buttons, UX, and so on, and it was like cut out, not here, not so expand this UX because you must see the map and. I must say it, big shout out to Lady Ponura, which was our lead of UX in this game, because it was so hard to take a lot of information on one screen in the tabs and so on, because you have the workers, mechs, a lot of resources, points, and so on, coins. So the hardest part was get all this info, but not overwhelm the players with that info.
Scythe is an absolutely beautiful game. It's probably one of the best looking games that has come out in the last 10 years. It's very evocative of the source material, and I'm sure that getting the UI and getting the art was a big challenge.
Yeah, and we also, the thing was that the graphics from Jakub Różalski's they are so great that we also wanted to show the graphics in the game. But you must hide them in the UI in the tabs and so on. So it was the second part that was hard to make in this game. The third, the last thing I would say, the habits, expectations from the players. For example, you have in Scythe ends. The game ends when you have 6 stars. But when you have 6 stars, that doesn't mean that you win. That only make that game is over. You count points from the workers, resources, and so on. And in board game, you count through the game these points in your head.
Yeah, of course.
You see the resources and so on. You count these points in your head. But in digital version, we added, for example, the tab with points, and automatically you see that you want in this round end the game, or in the next one and so on. So some players from the game board was like, hey, it's like cheating. In digital version, everyone should count this in their heads, not see on the screen. So you must see that you can remove this, give an option, leave that, and we have many examples of things like that. So the new players and hardcore players, I would say old players from the game board, and mix this in your digital version and see what works for most of the people.
How did you guys work with the soundtrack?
Oh yes, that's big shoutouts for our musicians. I really like. I had time in my work when I play soundtrack and develop the game in my office. It was so tight.
The soundtrack is dynamite. You guys give it away for free, which I think is excellent.
It's like on Steam you can download it and it's for free.
Who did the composers work with? Did they just get kind of like, here's what we want, some evocative material for the different clans and or factions, and go ahead, or was there more of a collaboration between them and the project?
The musicians get I would say a lot of free space to do what they want. They get a mood of the factions of the game and get the tempo of the game, because Scythe is not like 20 minutes session and save and go on. It's like 1-2 hours to play, especially with other people's in multiplayer, and so they have a lot of space to get what they want in making this music. But the works is so great. The soundtrack, I really like it.
What type of AI are you guys using? A deterministic system or something? Go ahead.
I like to would say that Scythe is a little bit like chess, because in Scythe you have, for the first moves, you have good practice moves.
Best practice openings.
Openings, and then you must see what other players let you do. So the AI at the beginning have the first moves, and then see what other players, where they have resources, max, and so on. But the beginning is like in chess. It's the best move from Polania with this mat is to get there and make trade, and so on, so on.
Is it evaluating the board state multiple moves ahead?
Could you repeat?
Is it evaluating the board state multiple moves ahead? In other words, is it coming up with a long-term plan, or is it strictly just dealing with the information at hand and coming up with the best move?
You can have a plan for the long term, but not always. During the game, when other players can attack you, you must change your plan. And the thing is that in Scythe, this meta game, so we have chat in multiplayer, and like in board game, you can say to another player, hey, now we can attack Polania or another faction, and it's allowed in this game, but why not, yeah?
How do you have the AI evaluating that type of situation where another player wants to cooperate with it.
Yeah, I would say you can't prepare for sure for that. Yeah, it's like edge cases. You know, 5 players on 1 player. What you can call to in your new game for such situation? I think you can't. And yes, you can, but it will be so much edge cases for like this situation. So the AI don't get information about the team up players, especially that team up players. It's not game mechanic based. It's like meta in chat on Discord, in chat in game.
Well, backing up a little bit, and I probably should have done this at the beginning of the conversation. Scythe is kind of 4X. It's very asymmetrical in the sense that all the factions play differently. Plus, there are random secret objectives for all of the various factions, which change up the game completely. And it's an engine builder game, so that you're looking to snowball is essentially how which is great because it's a 4X, and we know that snowballing is the best thing in a 4X, right?
Yeah, you know.
So, it's an optimization engine. And computers are really good at coming up with optimization engines or solutions for an optimization engine.
Yeah, the players after the tournaments have Excels for optimizations for the meta game, and after the years that board game exists, for today you have Excel, and you know that this math with this faction is the best. So, for example, we have banned mix of faction and maths in play. You can checkbox this, and in this game you can't play a mix of these 2 setups because it's too easy to win with that.
What's the best faction in your opinion?
Polania, of course.
Of course.
Yeah,
Knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Knew that was coming. I am a Saxony fan, but what can you do, right?
Yeah, so it is.
I don't know why. It's just, it's pretty much just an artwork decision for me.
Mm-hmm.
Saxony is not they're not the worst, but they're certainly not the best.
Yeah, it's a middle. But you like to fighting, so Saxony.
Yeah, exactly. You're very much in the weeds with things.
Yeah.
Let's bounce off of Scythe for a little bit because we've got I think I want to get into 2 more games. We've got the Fertile Crescent, which is, I didn't know that was done by you guys or published by you guys. That's Weird Interactive, or sorry, it's not Weird Interactive. It's is the name of that company. I can't remember who's building it.
I think neither I or Sir Jack can answer your questions, as I have literally played Fertile Crescent for 15 minutes one day just to check it out what it's about. I never was in this project, and I don't think you were there, Jack.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Me too. I was playing on Steam only half hour, and I was not developing this game.
So
Please remember that the Knights of Unity is a it's not maybe very big company, but it's definitely also not small. But we are pretty segmented into teams.
Yeah.
So by that I mean for example, we are around, let's say, 150 people company, and Death Road's team is it's around 15 people at the time, at one moment. And we have a lot of teams. Usually smaller, because Death Roads, I think, is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest teams in the company. Jack, how many people do you have inside?
For now, I would say 7.
Yeah.
Or with the QA and so on, it's a dozen of people.
I had no idea that Knights of Unity was 150 people.
Yeah, when you take everything together, I think we could count to 20. It's like it shifts from time to time. Sometimes some people come, sometimes some people go. But yeah.
I just looked up, and we're like 15 minutes shy of 2 hours. Let me go into a wrap up phase.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll start with Scythe, and we'll wrap up with Scythe. Why if you had 30 seconds in an elevator to tell someone why to buy Scythe, what would you say? Go.
Yeah, I would say great soundtrack, great graphics for Jakub Różalski, and you must not prepare all the stuff like in board game. You can play on demand with other people. So I really recommend to play at the start with AI, then go to the multiplayer with other players. We have a community with tournaments, and they really like to play and fight to people to play in multiplayer. Yeah, just check it out.
Thank you, Jack. And you guys have the roadmap on Facebook. I'll link that down to our comments section, not the comments section,
There's an expansion for Scythe where there are, like flying battle cruisers, right? Like
Yes.
ships.
Yeah, and that's
This is why you should play. This is why you should play Scythe, because it has flying battleships. Like
Mech
I think that
and
ships
the
that
flying
fly,
battles. Yeah.
ships that fly are my number one coolest thing in the world. I don't think there's anything cooler. I think it's the bee's knees. Like if you will ever see, if you ever see a roguelike deck builder about a flying ship, you know who did it.
Well, why aren't we making that?
I still haven't nailed the design. How to evoke the flying ship. But it will come someday. I have learned that true inspiration is it's just sparks. You can foster it. You can do this a lot of things that help you stay creative. But like this true moments of inspiration when your neurons light up and you start writing down like a maniac an idea, it just happens. And I'm waiting for the one that will lead to the.
You heard it here, folks. Death Skies tournament coming up next.
Yeah, Death Sky tournament. That's there was it would be fun because there was this game that we used the component system from Deep Sky Derelicts. So we like Death, Sky, Spire.
Yeah.
All stars.
Yeah, all stars and.
I thought Death Skies, or not Deep Skies, was a good game, but it just didn't hit that mark. I enjoyed it though.
Yeah, same. I enjoyed it, but it didn't quite hit the mark. The graphics is amazing, but the thing I really disliked was the map moving feature. I just didn't found it really. It wasn't very clean design, and it was something that put me sort of off the game. Wondering if there is a game I really like that's not
one of the great things about Deep Sky dialects at this time is Derelicts. Is you can get it for like $5 in every expansion. So
looking, I just wanted to say if I'm missing some obvious Pirate Atlas. That was the game I kind of liked. I liked.
Yes. I mean, it's certainly a Slay the Spire like, but I originally started playing it on mobile, and I thought it was really good. But it was really grindy, and so when they moved it to the computer, it was much less grindy, and I enjoyed that one a lot.
I really hate it, but when I'm looking at all these games, and I played most of them, especially the ones not released last year, I realize I'm kind of a hater. I really like Slay the Spire, and the others one are kind of okay. I don't think it would be cool to trash the ones I really don't like, because what's the point? I only wanted to shout out where it is. I wanted to shout out Backpack Hero. This game always looked awesome. Haven't still had the chance to play it.
Me either.
The arena. Yeah. Yeah, Dicey Dungeons. That's my jam.
Dicey Dungeons is good.
Yeah. And
the arena is great.
Yeah,
that is really fun.
Yeah, that was one of the games I was like, damn, they are doing sort of similar thing to us, but they are doing it really well. They understand I think they from the core systems they got a lot more, how do they say, punch for your buck, but how do you say it?
Bang for your buck.
Yeah, I think they got a way more bang for their buck for their core systems. And yeah, I also wanted to shout out Gordian Quest.
Gordian Quest is very good too.
Yeah, and it's also one of the games that has this a little more AI approach. It's not as I think robust as our system, but it's kind of cool.
Okay, guys, I must say a roguelike game, Noita.
Oh my good dude, Jack is serving taste at the end.
Yeah,
Noita
that's
is
right.
Noita is absolutely amazing. This game is a work of art, genius, and madness.
Oh
It's
yes.
absolutely overwhelming, but it has this amazing feeling of that I just can only suspect. Maybe you, SJ, can support me here. That when you approach some games in 80s or 90s,
Mm,
you are just like, wow, what does it do? What happens here? I don't know
yeah,
anything because there's no internet and something. And the Noita is the same, but in current times because it's so ungodly complex.
yeah, that's right. You
Oh my
have
god, this game is
so many Easter eggs and hidden mechanics. You can play like in playground like a child. Amazing.
I don't do a
yeah.
lot of action games because I have some damage to my right arm recently, nerve damage, and I'm 53. My reflexes suck. I mean, you're not going to find me on a StarCraft game, but I used to play, my 20s and 30s. So I really get into the card games because they're turn based and they're slower, and that's why I get into board games so much. Other than I've been doing them for a while, so I never got a chance to play Noida. What is the complexity the best feature of it?
the systemic approach. This is one of the best systemic games in the world. It's just like the gimmick of the game that every single pixel has its own like physics. It's not just a gimmick, it's used all the time in gameplay, and the game not as much has systems, but this one amazingly complex system of interrelations of particles, materials, physics. It's absolutely astounding.
Yeah,
And it's
and
also look great.
at the start of the game you can only fire from your wand, but
Yeah.
in the middle of the game or after a few hours you can get another wand and you can fire to the water to see what happens when you fire with acid, and the acid connect to the water, so you have lake with acid, and so on, so on. So the complexity is hidden, but you discover it step by step. It's really, really great. You can play it
Yeah,
simple, but you discover all the mechanics hidden.
I
yeah,
loved
and
how the magic
also
system in Divinity did that. Divinity, the RPG, where you would cast water or onto lightning and you would electrocute people. I
Yeah,
like that immersive kind of system
yeah, but
gameplay.
in Noita you do not get like preset wands that do this or that, but you get like these wands because you're a magician that uses wands. It's basically like the item you're using.
Mhm.
It has like these slots for all these different modifiers of the spell, so to say, which is basically your shooting mode. And you can do so many things with it. The customization options are endless. There are no two runs the same. And the game it's not very I think you would enjoy it because it's not that based on reflex, but more on understanding the game,
tactics.
because like after
Say.
tactics, abusing some of the systems. But
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
I think you will really dig it. Shout out to Noita, amazing game.
It's certainly it's one of the defining games in the genre. Has
Yeah.
huge positive ratings. I think it might be overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah. If I can shout out some games I'm recently amazed with, I
Yeah.
wanted to shout out Outer Wilds.
Yeah.
I recently played.
Mm,
Oh my god, this is work of art. Work of art. Thank you so much, developers of Outer Wilds, for reminding me what the games can be, and it's a sense of wonder and discovery. And without like the design of this game is so clean, it just gives you this need, this want, this urge to explore, and you are not pointed in any direction. You can do anything you want, and some of the things are it's great feeling that you feel smart, that you figured something out just from the context, the clues, and so on. And there are so many layers of beauty and merit to the game. It's just it's just wow. I'm constantly amazed with the experience, and I'm still not done with the game. I have like some final touches to do. Yeah, because the current year is coming, and we are waiting for 2 massive indie continuations. So shout out to Hollow Knight and incoming Silksong. Finally, after so many years, let's go Hornet. And also thank you so much to Supergiant Games for making my dreams come true and announcing last year that they are making Hades 2. I didn't want anything else from pop culture. I only wanted Hades 2. Thank you, Supergiant.
And the last,
Like I wasn't, yeah.
the last when CJ, you don't like reflex games, The Witness.
Oh yeah, also good game.
The Witness, that's interesting. That got very mixed reviews. I have never played it.
Oh, it's like
It's great. It's
yeah,
great.
resolve this puzzle. That's all at the beginning, but through the game, the main thing in that game is you get all the history of the game, the plot from the environment. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's a really good game. The riddles are amazing. They are extremely hard, but usually very fair. I haven't played that much to get into the narrative, but I have so much respect for Jonathan Blow. I think the last scene of Raid is one of the the strongest moments when it comes to creating narration from gameplay. Like I don't want to spoil anything, but anyone who played Braid and remembers the last sequence, it's just astounding. It's just astounding how well crafted and innovative it is. And if you would enjoy The Witness, I would also recommend. I think my favorite logic game, which is Antichamber.
Oh, yeah.
Antichamber?
Yeah.
I love this Antichamber. Antichamber is basically like Portal on LSD.
Break rules. Break rules.
Yeah, and also a huge fan of Portal in its own right. I think Portal is one of the most important games of the generation for sure.
Yeah, but
Jack, what about you?
For me, Antichamber is next level than Portal.
Yeah. Antichamber has just so many great ideas, has so much, this boldness in presentation and in design. Is funny, clever, and is also really challenging. And it strikes this great balance in logic games when you both the riddle is really challenging, but feels fair, and you feel really smart when you are done with it. And it's not just take all the pieces of what is in the level and fuse them together. Because, for example, some levels in Portal 2, for example, for me were like that. I absolutely love Portal 2. The narrative is top of the shelf, but I think some levels are just like you move around the level, you see everything there is, you just connect the dots and you go through it.
Right.
And the best riddles, there is something missing. You feel that it's almost there, and when you grasp it, you are like, obviously, that's where the greatness in the games is.
Olek, what about I'm sorry, that was Olek. Maszrum. Not Maszrum's gone, and so it's Jack. Sorry, my brain just died out. What influential games do you think you want to shout out?
Could you repeat?
What influential games do you want to shout out to our listeners that you would suggest?
Yeah, the Witness, Noita. I must say that I'm Counter-Strike player, but this is not something creative game and so on. But I like play with my friends Counter-Strike. Another game. The last thing. Oh, I will tell you about game that I want to buy, but I don't buy it yet. And it's like old game in Egypt. It was strategic game, and the new version on the Steam is Nabucodonosor.
Yes.
You mean Pharaoh?
Yes.
You mean Pharaoh?
No, Nebuchadnezzar is it's a pharaoh-like, but they do a bunch of things differently.
Yeah, the Pharaoh was like my childhood game, but last week I see the Nabucodonosor on the Steam, and for me it's like journey to my childhood. I was so many hours playing the Pharaoh, so I would check out this Nabucodonosor.
Well, they did do a new Pharaoh as well that just came out not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it's more true to form as the old Impressions one. Because, yeah, Impression games are definitely my childhood as well. I just didn't like the walker system for modern gameplay. Back then, the walker system was great because that's all we really knew. But now I think there are much better ways to do it. Devican Desert has more... first of all, it's got a DLC that's really narrative. And I really suggest getting it with the DLC.
Okay. Yeah, we'll check this game out.
I kind of like it better than Pharaoh, and people will probably yell at me for that, but we won't tell you that I bounced off of Slay the Spire either. But I have some weird taste. Let's we're over 2 hours.
If I can just like on the one last note, because I would kill myself if I wouldn't mention this. I unfortunately can't mention the game that's on my mind a lot recently because it's linked to one of the newest projects and we don't know where it will end up. But I want to shout out at the very end my favorite. I wouldn't call it game per se because I treat it more like an experimental meta-narrative.
Mm-hmm.
But big shout out to the Stanley Parable, my favorite thing when it comes to anything game related. I just like Stanley Parable really finds my life, and
It's a game. It is a game.
Can you win at it?
No.
No, of course not.
No.
No,
I'm having a laugh because like I studied film theory, so to say.
Okay.
I don't know what's the direct translation, but we had like at this second like the bachelor studies, we had the classes on games, and we had this like ludology class, and on one of the first classes we were discussing what's the border where you call something a game and where you don't call something a game.
Yeah.
And Stanley Parable was exactly on border, and we're like discussing for 1.5 hours. Is it a game? Is it not a game?
Do you need a win? Well, no, we can go on for another 2 or 3 hours if I ask. Do you need a win condition for it to be a game?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but if you don't know anything about Stanley Parable, do not know anything about it, just play it. Maybe you will not like it, but maybe, just maybe, it will change your life like it.
Excellent. So I'm going to wrap it up here. We went a little bit longer than I wanted to, or we planned. I wanted to go for another 3 hours. Maybe we'll do a second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope maybe with an update on Deckbuilding we'll have something.
Yeah.
Also, guys, we're talking about shouting out so many games, but we are play our games, play Scythe, play the Deckbuilding tournament. The game was just released, and it's fun and will be even more fun in future updates. We are having a pretty warm reception from the players. We are starting to get a community. Some bigger names in streaming are recently picking the game up. Like I was because Northern Lion played it, I think, yesterday on stream.
Nice, and, the Northern Lion bump.
Yeah, that meant a lot for me personally, because like the first time I've seen a roguelike game was when my friend showed me Northern Lion video on Binding of Isaac, and his videos on Slay the Spire helped me slump out of the nasty depression in some time. So like seeing him enjoy the game I made because of his videos, because without this Binding of Isaac and this Slay the Spire that led me to playing this game a lot, I wouldn't be where I am and have my career and this great game that we just published.
Ryan is a great streamer.
He's one of the best. He's just good at his job.
I think he made more money at streaming Splunky than the developers of Splunky made, and that's saying a lot. All right, guys, thank you so much for being here with us. I will link all these games and all the Knights of Unity games down in the description of the video, and I'll also tell people that we, the Strategy Informers, giving away a copy of Death Roads, so that's kind of cool. And we'll talk again. I'd like to see where Death Roads goes and talk more about it.
Yeah, we we are also very keen on seeing what happens with our game. And thank you so much for having us. It's a great talk,
Yeah.
man.
All right.
Thanks
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.